everyone, this is Miller, Maryland, and oh wow, do I have something to share with you. Now, I'm not necessarily a rabid fact checker. I do sometimes fact check something when I see or hear something I think is really weird, but that's mostly because the stuff I see and hear in question are mostly opinion based. You know how it is, I'll let them live their truth. Unless it's something like, I think the earth is flat, or I think humans are not animals, which are obviously wrong. But this video, we gotta talk about it. It's called Fun Facts About the US President's Educational Cartoon. It's from Huggbees, who I understand made a video similar to what I'm about to make, where he fact-checked some kid named Kelly on their president's video. For somebody that debunked Kelly on her obviously incorrect video on the presidents, which, don't get me wrong, was the right thing to do because she was telling a lot of lies about the presidency, it's really hypocritical to go ahead and make a video just like that, if not worse. Now you may be thinking, Miller, can't you say that this is obvious satire? I can, but a child cannot. And children are almost certainly seeing this video, so they're going to grow up thinking this kind of stuff is true. And satire does not work if people do not get it. Take Sylvia Knight, for example. She's a fictional character that was extremely popular in Iceland in the 2000s for her satirical nature, but when she represented the country at Eurovision in 2006, she was relentlessly booed for her attitude and behavior by the audience who did not know that she wasn't real. And even if this was satire or fake, it's clear you knew what you were doing. So for that reason, I gotta fact check you, because there's a lot of obviously incorrect stuff in here. I'm only going to be talking about the claims that are truly incorrect. So I'm not going to bring up every claim here to light, because some of them are true. Let's get started.
Thomas Jefferson offered to sell his own personal library to the Library of Congress after they had theirs burned down by the British during the War of 1812. Only about 97% of Jefferson's books were purchased, as the remaining 3 were too offensively pornographic for preservation.
Where did you get that from? Where did you get the percentages from? The library did not vet all the books he had. They purchased the whole thing. The kind of controversial stuff you were talking about, that was because he had works from Rousseau, Voltaire, and other figures of the Enlightenment, and those were seen as atheistic. You may have also been referring to The Prospect Before Us. That was controversial, not because it had porn, it did not. That was controversial because it insulted John Adams, which at the time it was made was illegal under the Alien and Sedition Act. Nothing about this had to do with pornography. Also, he did not write The Cat in the Hat. That was Dr. Seuss.
James Madison was less than 5 feet tall and weighed less than 100 pounds. Somehow, he set the all-time bench press record of any president that has been in office at 400 pounds unassisted.
Bench presses did not exist when Madison was alive. They were popularized in 1899 and became commonplace starting in the 1930s. Mind you, Madison died in 1836, so there would have been no way he would have done any bench pressing.
John Quincy Adams loved to skinny dip, and one morning his clothes were confiscated by a reporter who only gave them back after he agreed to do an interview. The reporter noted in his article, "President Quincy Adams is hung like a horse and tastes like a stallion."
The interview was actually a legend. Yes, he had a habit of skinny dipping in the Potomac River, but there was never an instance where a journalist sat on his clothes and refused to move, or confiscated his clothes until he gave them an interview. And the journalist we were talking about was Anne Royale, so you got the gender wrong. And she would not have done that in the first place because she and John Quincy Adams were friends, so he would have granted an interview anyway.
Andrew Jackson once killed a man in a duel, and swore until his deathbed that the man in question was actually him time-traveling from the future. He was quoted on his deathbed as saying, "Don't go to Disneyland on April 10th, 2030. Some real bad shit is gonna happen."
Literally this. First off, Disneyland didn't open until 1955. Walt Disney was born in 1901. Jackson died in 1845, so there would have been no way he would have known about Disney. Secondly, how did you come to the conclusion that Charles Dickinson was actually Andrew Jackson time traveling? The two were long rivals and regularly exchanged insults at each other before the duel happened. As a matter of fact, it was triggered because Dickinson insulted his wife. Where are you getting these facts from? Genuine question.
James K. Polk oversaw building the Washington Monument. At first, he called it the greatest achievement of his term, but grew a strong distaste for it after continually explaining to everyone that it wasn't meant to symbolize Washington's penis.
James K. Polk oversaw the start of the building of the Washington Monument. It wasn't completed until 1888. Polk died 39 years before that, so he would not have had these conversations in the first place.
Millard Fillmore was an avid pervert, having married his former schoolteacher, and shown up to State of the Union addresses occasionally adorning a custom-made fursuit. Fillmore claimed he had a different fursuit for every occasion, but sources say that no man in America during that time could possibly have that much money, not even the president.
Okay, it would be really cool if we had a phrase the president. Would be better than what we got now. But in regards to Fillmore, no, fursuits were not a thing in the 1850s. Even if they were, Fillmore would not have worn them. He was the most boring person to ever hold office. Secondly, calling Fillmore a pervert for marrying his schoolteacher is also weird. While yes, he did marry his schoolteacher, she was just 2 years older than him. Not 20, 2. It was not weird for young adults to be teaching school in the 19th century, nor does it make Fillmore a pervert.
Franklin Pierce had a severe addiction to Pringles canned potato crisps. While suffering physical withdrawal during a gala at the White House, Pierce screamed across the ballroom, "Once you pop, the fun don't stop," before vomiting on several dancers.
Pringles were not a thing until 1968, and the motto wasn't a thing until the 90s. Pierce was long gone before that, so it would have literally been impossible for him to get Pringles. Not only is this inaccurate, if you think about it, you're making fun of somebody who had depression while in office and suffered the loss of all three of his children, one of them in a gruesome and devastating way, mind you, just before he was going to get inaugurated. Pierce had severe alcoholism because of these losses. By making a video claiming he had an addiction to Pringles when his real-life addiction was based on trauma, you are downright insulting him and everyone else in his predicament. Let's just move on. I'm getting too carried by this.
James Buchanan was the only unmarried president. Although he was engaged in his youth, Buchanan called it off after he finally saved up enough money to buy a PlayStation. He regularly mentioned never regretting this decision.
PlayStations were not a thing until 1994, when James Buchanan had been dead for over 120 years. Electricity was not even a thing in his time, so he would not have been able to play a PlayStation. Though I will give you credit, I don't think it would be entirely out of character for him to do this. He basically did nothing to stop the Civil War. He probably would have preferred playing Crash Bandicoot over trying to save the nation.
Abraham Lincoln doesn't have much written about him in history books, but historians proclaim he may or may not have been the president at one point, and was likely seen in public wearing a hat.
Yeah, last time I checked, having a 34-foot tower of books written about you is not having very little written about you. Not only that, have you not been to DC? Have you not looked at a $5 bill? Or a penny? Or went to school? Abraham Lincoln is not some mysterious figure. He's arguably the most well-known US president out of all of them. This is just beyond disingenuous.
Andrew Johnson actually wasn't a human being, but was a dog trained to bark whenever someone said the word president. Most people haven't looked closely enough at the facts to notice this.
Actually, the Earth is flat. Most people just haven't looked closely enough at the facts to notice this. That's just blatantly incorrect. It's not even funny. I don't even know who you are fooling, but you're looking just like Kelly right now. As a matter of fact, you're making Kelly look really good.
Rutherford B. Hayes was the first president to have a telephone in the White House. Hayes himself wasn't aware of this fact, leading to many disappointed telemarketers.
Oh, Hayes was aware he had a telephone in the house. He just didn't use it very much because it was a limited technology and didn't have people calling him at the time. In fact, the only place he could call was the Department of Treasury, so it was basically not that useful. Also, you claimed there were telemarketers who wanted to chat with Hayes. Telemarketing as an industry did not exist when Hayes was president.
Grover Cleveland was the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms.
Who's gonna tell him?
Benjamin Harrison was the first president to hire a female staff member, a move we're still feeling the horrifying repercussions of today.
This thing can vote, by the way.
Grover Cleveland was the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms.
Who's gonna tell him?
William McKinley's stare was rumored to be able to kill a person at 100 yards, a claim McKinley himself regularly boasted about.
William McKinley was not some psychopathic demon, although the photos kind of show him. He's actually one of the nicest people to ever serve in office. You have to be more worried about his smile first.
Warren G. Harding's favorite noise was this.
Bruh, you made those noises by yourself. Be so for real.
Calvin Coolidge usually went by his middle name, Calvin, in public. His full legal name was Calvin Calvage Coolvinage Coolidge.
His actual full legal name is John Calvin Coolidge Jr. Google is free, you know.
Franklin D. Roosevelt faked having polio so people would make him the president out of pity. And
this is probably one of my favorite facts because contrary to what Huggbees says here, FDR did the exact opposite of fake having polio. He went to great lengths to cover up his paralysis, most notably through assisted standing. It was to the point where there were only a handful of photos of him actually in a wheelchair. Even if he did indeed fake having polio, it would have been electoral suicide, quite frankly. There was a huge stigma against those with paralysis then, so if he didn't do what he did to cover up his paralysis, he would not have been the president. This was anything but a Stephanie situation.
Dwight D. Eisenhower was a 5-star general for his service in both World Wars, and was quickly promoted to 500-star general once he became president. Eisenhower's only regret in life was not placing in the top 100 player rankings for Rocket League, because that would have earned him his 5 million star general promotion.
Eisenhower was only a 5-star general in World War II. There's no such thing as a 500-star general rank, let alone a 5 million star general rank. Plus, Rocket League wasn't even a thing when Eisenhower was alive. I'm seeing a pattern here and I don't like it.
Lyndon B. Johnson DJ'd by the name of Dr. L.B. Jizrespect. His shows were immensely unpopular, and he only made about $70 in ticket sales.
There's no DJ named Dr. LB Respect, because you made that up. Also, do you know how impractical it would be for a president to pull something like this? They're legally not allowed to make more than their salary, and the $70 Johnson would have earned, according to you, will get him a one-way ticket to impeachment. It's incredibly unpresidential behavior.
Richard Nixon once sweated so hard during an interview that he collapsed from dehydration. On that same day, an entire wall of the White House needed to be rebuilt from the Kool-Aid Man rushing to the president's rescue.
The Kool-Aid Man never rushed to aid Nixon, because he's a fictional character. And the feigning part, that's fake as well. Nixon did sweat hard, but that was during the presidential debate, and he was really sick at the time.
Gerald Ford can't spell his own name, and often signs documents as Rickleton D. Pickleton. Nobody has ever been able to identify where President Ford thought of this name, and when asked, he just replies, "Don't you recognize me? It's me, Rickleton."
What's this? Yeah, that's a signature. I don't know about you, but that doesn't look like Rickleton D. Pickleton to me. That looks like Gerald R. Ford.
Jimmy Carter often retreats into his pants like a sleeping bag when threatened or surprised. During a televised debate, Carter once hid himself in response to a car alarm going off, and it took the moderator 20 minutes to convince him it was okay to come out.
Want to know what I think about this? Remember that time when Kelly claimed Lincoln won his election via a wrestling contest?
George Bush Sr. still thinks the sun revolves around the Earth, and plans to visit the sun in 2040 to prove his theory right. Accompanying him will be his dog, Mr. Magic Brush, and a bag of candy corn labeled emergency rations.
George H.W. Bush is not going to go to the sun in 2040 to prove a scientifically debunked claim. Because he's dead. Even if he wasn't, I'm not entirely sure that any 116-year-old would voluntarily go on a suicide mission.
George W. Bush begged his dad to go with him on his mission to the sun, but George Bush Sr. famously replied, "You're the sun I have here on Earth, but the sun up in space is still mine for the taking."
That conversation did not happen. Because his dad is dead.
Bill Clinton once fucked an intern in the Oval Office, and for some stupid reason, people got all mad about it.
For some stupid reason, he was literally impeached over that. And additionally, he was doing all that with Monica Lewinsky while he was married. He was straight up cheating on his wife. As a president, you don't do that. Presidents have been grilled for less. Obama with his pantsuit, Bush Jr. with his Bushisms. Neither were on that scale. So yeah, this is probably one of the worst videos I've seen about the US presidents. Not only did you pretty much mimic Kelly's disinformation about the presidency, you also, like her, framed this as an educational cartoon. Again, I know this is satire, but that only works if people know that. There are kids now that are going to watch this and are going to grow up thinking that George H.W. Bush still wants to go to the sun even after he's dead, or that Andrew Johnson was a dog, among other claims. Basically, a lot of the stuff that you crucified Kelly for, albeit rightfully, could be applied to you too. Word of advice, stick to how it's made videos. Thanks for watching. This is Miller, Maryland. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time.